usually playing either for Prodigy Yumis or for Sork as kind of a fast state AP comp, ideally one for each. And then the really important player is the X Factor player. Can someone find a line that can pull off good results from the right spots in 2-1 to find success in top 4? This can be a reroll line like Kaisa, like Jin Nar, for example, with Mundo as that great tank. It can be the crew. It can be a hero augment, for example. It could be a Crystal Gambit for maybe a first place. So that's really the X Factor player I think is the most interesting in this format and in this current meta.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't hurt at all, since we're starting with component anvils here. So we've not got the giant injection of gold or the unpredictability we might see from other games we've certainly seen across series so far. Certainly, if you can get the strong early start, we've seen some Gangplank 2s dropping in occasionally from time to time. All those hero augments, you can get them off and running very quickly.
The component animals are going to be very important. One for reroll, especially for hero augments, because you have the chance to find your best in slot, and you have the chance to have a triple itemized carry as soon as you hit the 3-star basically in stage 3, which is a really big deal. Also very important for units that really want to have exact best in slot items. They don't have very much flexibility, like Karma, for example, in Sorks. She wants to have exactly Shojin, JG, and Guardbreaker or Striker's Flail to blow up the opponent's tank. Something like a GP, for example, who is so bow hungry. If you play Tempo GP in stage 2 and you don't have priority on carousels, you're mostly going to be starved for bows, and the component anvils here help to fix this for the players who are trying to play both high tempo and to play into one of the strongest reroll lines in the game right now.
I mean, certainly, of course, we'll be looking out for any of our players who do manage to acquire a sneaky Gangplank in the early going. Of course, yesterday we did see the 2-star dropping in immediately. It's extremely unlikely to be seeing that again across the rest of the event, but SCSC will be our first, as you said. We'll be seeing from AlQadsiah at least one other player bring in, and of course, mentors, they've been a big part of things as well.
Roll, pick middle. Teacher's Council is a very attractive option. Plays directly into, of course, one of the strongest reroll lines that we're talking about, Gangplank. The mentor bonuses will be increased by 10%, so just overall better bonuses. There was a scout there from SCSC trying to see if, anyone on his team has a better spot, maybe, 2 GPs or perfect items, whatever it might be, but in the end, he will be that reroll player. And I think it's quite funny that it is SCSC committing to this line, because in the last edition of EWC for TFT, he was predominantly the reroll player for T1. He was a player that was rolling through everyone in stage 3, taxing everyone for playing weak boards and maybe not playing for the highest cap, although in this game he might, but usually playing for a lot of health preservation, which was so pivotal for T1's success last year.
All right, we see a little bit of scouting out here to see if SCSC can get off to the races early on. But yeah, the Teachers Council, an amazing start. Looking through some of our augments on the left-hand side. Looks like Volta's gone for Starsborn for a little bit of a quicker start, but looks like overall our players are leaning more into the combat side of things to bring some more power in line. We've only got one person, Dunizini, willing to go and put his hands in the fate's destiny. So, honestly, it looks like we've got extra components coming in, we've got board strength coming across the field. Doesn't necessarily seem like we're going to be going into the extreme economy we've seen in some of our other matches.
Yep. We saw there from Crazy Moving there was Treasure Hunt, so very, very strong gold augment. One of the warping 2-1 augments, I would say, that really enable comps to perform at a higher level. It looks like he might be angling Katarina. Really, you can angle any reroll line, except for Kale. This is one common misconception on ladder that I see players commit to. With Kale, you're only really rolling at 3-1 for Kale 3, and then you're using all your gold to push levels to make it to 9 as efficiently as possible. Treasure Hunt wants you to roll every single stage, even stage 5, even stage 6 to some degree, to continue proccing the chest and you're able to get extra loot from. So it's very important to make sure you're playing a line that wants to reroll just continuously across the game.
Yeah, and of course, we didn't even get a chance to mention it as of yet, the Kale composition, definitely one of the losers from day one. It feels like it's such a fragile composition to put together, and when you've got this many players and this much interference overall, you've got to really take account of it. So as our players get settled in here in stage 2, for any of our folks who are coming into this for the first time seeing 4v4, because we know there's going to be plenty of people who are not familiar with the format, it's not played very often. What's your kind of biggest piece of advice for somebody watching right now that they need to be paying closest attention to really kind of get the core of 4v4?
The game mode is the same as free-for-all TFT, which means you can face your teammates. And this is both a strategic element that really adds a lot of depth to TFT as a whole. The key thing is preserving HP. It doesn't matter if you, like in a ladder game, become the strongest player in the lobby in stage 4 and you win out, because if you are 20 HP, you can eliminate your own teammates. You can face your own teammates, and that's not the name of the game. The name of the game is preserving HP, looking at the total HP your team has when you're adding all 4 players together. This is what really indicates who is in a better position coming into stage 4.
Well, I mean, certainly we've heard it from Mortdog himself before, criticizing EMEA players for generally kind of sitting back in the early game and trying to hold things out. I would imagine we kind of hold that in contrast with T1 being more, towards playing those rerolls, more towards getting the early board strength together.
Looking here at T1 for Bintum, potentially going to be trying to angle Jin reroll, potentially just playing this for tempo. We saw there was also Volta with Stars Are Born earlier on. I believe he had a Kabuko too. I'm not sure if he actually has that off of the Stars Are Born. I would expect he would want to save the actual Stars Are Born proc to find the GP2 directly from the shop. But we will see what the case will be. He has slammed IE, Rageblade, which is not best in slot Gangplank. Now the considered best in slot is going to be Rageblade, Krakens, and Edge of Night. But the IE can always be moved on later on to Yasuo, and you do want to have a 3-item Gangplank as soon as possible, even if it is tank items, for example, on the Gangplank.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't hate at all to see Volta being put in a position of responsibility in the game, as SCSC will grab a Gangplank off of the carousel as well. Since we've got an overview of the field here, any of the other augments you want to call out from any of our players we haven't really gotten a chance to visit with yet?
Crimea River from Flouders. We'll see if he's going to be angling towards Kaisa reroll, has IE and Shojin Slam, which is not an item pairing you see very often on other units right now in the current meta, so that might be the angle for them. I think taking a page out of Bintum's or T1's book, AlQadsiah is understanding how important it is to master 2-cost rerolls in terms of HP preservation in stage 3. Ideally, I think in this meta, it might even be something like 2 or 3 rerollers, 2-cost rerollers especially, and 1 win-out player to secure the bag in stage 5 and have reroll players just dominate the HP totals in stage 3.
I guess I kind of want to open up sort of a general question here, because we know teams have different strengths and different kind of priorities in their play, to a given degree, of course. But in this situation here, where T1 have proven themselves as exceptional reroll players before, is it practical to try and face them on their own ground?
It kind of cancels out both the strength and the weaknesses of the playstyle. I think it's fine. It ends up coming down to who understands the better lines to go into, who has the better conditions for certain reroll lines, and who hits. Also, it's a big part of TFT. There is some variance, of course, involved in terms of holding other people's units, in terms of holding Gangplank, in terms of holding Katarinas with only one player rerolling Katarina, for example. So there's a lot of agency that you have as a 4-man squad compared to when you're playing just by yourself in a solo game of TFT.
Well, we do want to take a note there, Bintum going up against Volta in the previous round, which means that T1 will be the ones preserving the win streak into PvE, so that's a lot of money out of pocket. At the bottom, though, at least the good news for Katsir is Rabinav has kept hold of his loss streak, so we kind of equalized out in terms of economy between the two teams.
Waters does seem locked into an interesting version of Kaisa reroll with Protectors instead of Juggernauts. If one of his teammates is going for Mundo and the Juggernauts as their main game plan, potentially even just a Jin Gnar or just a vertical Juggernaut with a backline carry like Ashe or TF later on, it's in his best interest to try and play for a different frontline. And Protectors does fit with Kaisa. You have Supreme Cells on both the Kennen and the Kaisa, so you get the extra damage amp on her off of that connection.
Well, talk to me about the kinds of builds, because we did see it in day one, but it certainly hasn't been front and center necessarily. How does it kind of fit into kind of the overall hierarchy of what we've been seeing played, of course with Gangplank at the very top?
Kaisa's a scaling champion. She gets extra AD off of her takedowns or her kills, which means that you have to have an early itemized Kaisa. Component Anvils helps with this, of course, having a 3-item Kaisa early on to guarantee she's able to snowball, basically. Very similar to what we saw from Shaco in set 14. It's the same exact idea. I consider it to be a backup plan to Jin Gnar in terms of the meta, but I think from the right spot, it can become very crazy, especially when we saw yesterday from Opal with certain power-ups like over 9,000, where you're getting scaling off of the power-up, as well as her kit, and then she ends up not falling off in the late game. That's the big thing with 2-cost rerolls. They dominate stage 3 and 4, then they fall off when the 4 and 5 costs come online, but with Kaisa, she continues growing and continues to be a threat in the late game as well.
I mean, certainly Flowers seems to be in a great spot for it. He's managed to maintain a 4-round win streak, so he's getting those stacks in pocket. Volta will stay at the top as Bintum did lose his win streak just before coming into PvE, so a little bit of gold taken out of things overall. I want to take a note, of course, Rabinav is a loss streaking player here. Did manage to sneak in the Crystal Gambit along the way and hasn't popped through a lot of his items, so keeping things nice and toasty for AlQadsiah down at the bottom.
I would say he was our lost streak player because he has a Mundo too, and I'm sure that with those component anvils and those components that came through, he will be able to construct a pretty scary board. As scary as the one we're seeing here from Volta. Already a Yasuo 2 online, already 6 Kabukos, only 2 Gangplanks unfortunately, but overall the rest of the board is looking very strong, a very early Jarvan as well. And this is what we're talking about. This is the element that we're seeing in 4v4. You roll down to 10 gold on level 6 because Volta's game plan, although with GP maybe he can win out, his key game plan is to preserve all of his HP, come into stage 4 ideally with 97 or at least above 85 HP, then he's done a very, very good job.
No, I'm absolutely with you there, and we can see right now he's being very, very dominant indeed. And I'd say it's one of the many, many things I love about the format overall is how teams play their long game and what they're needing to do for the team. We saw in the series before, teammates intentionally putting themselves in harm's way because they know the win is what matters. Vlados keeps his win streak going, so let's get our second augment in place.
Pyromaniac, he already has the red buff on the Kaisa, so I don't think you want to go for 2 red buffs. The strongest survive is interesting. This is a Supreme Cell specific augment. Portable Forge also going to be a very interesting option. So many broken interactions, but he's going to lean into first the just direct unit upgrades. He gets a free Kaisa and some cannons as well to try and accelerate his game plan of finding these 3 stars, and also just indexing onto Supreme Cells. He's already playing it. He says this might be good enough.
It's really interesting because definitely I haven't had a chance to mess around with this augment too much, but from what I saw there, it's granting the health to the Supreme Cell. In this case, that's going to be Kaisa. So when we get to the end of the round, presumably she's going to be very hard to put down.
I think it's more than just health. I think there are more stats involved, but we'll see the pick here. We'll see. It'll be relevant, of course, for GP. GP targets lowest health, not lowest percent health, so Kaisa will dodge being targeted more than Janna, for example, which is very, very big deal when it comes to stretchy arms, of course, in the late game. And especially with Kaisa not having any healing, not having any Edge of Night, for example, as well, it'll help her have that extra survivability.
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely, that definitely feeds into the bigger point there, of course. Everything has got to work with the idea that the Gangplank will always be there. In this case, the Kaisa actually did manage to burst out the Gangplank pretty well. And as we move forward, we will see one of the boards we were expecting to see. Espat, of course, here with the Sorcerers, we know, again, incredible top 4 placement. The stats here are really, really good. And as I talked about in the pre-show, having a top 4 player is very important for a team's overall strategy.
For those viewers at home who might be confused, Espat buying units, immediately selling them on his board, this is a min-max strategy. When the units are in your shop, they're essentially removed from the pool as if you had bought them. If they're units that you know are not meta, or that the opposing team is not necessarily wanting to roll for, you can buy and sell your shop, and these exact units might go back into their shops as they're rolling instead of the Gangplanks or the categories that they're looking for. So very small 0.3% increase in chances of that mattering, but it is, of course, the small things that end up deciding games in TFT.
Oh, yeah. I mean, considering the caliber of opponent you're up against here, I think you take every advantage and just hope they add up overall. The Cloudus, though, he's been a major force in this lobby. We were talking about the win streak from before. That's still in place. He's only lost a single round, and that Kaisa is absolutely stacking up. I don't know if we'll be able to get a stat count on her, but she is really ripping through. Of course, she's got the extra cast speed, she's got the Infinity Edge as well to multiply up her damage. No one right now can stand up to her.
Unfortunately for Espat, he faced back-to-back both of his reroll teammates who are looking to punish the rest of the lobby. He faced Volta first, and he faced then Flouders there with a Kaisa reroll, so taking some big hits, despite having a stage 3 Karma with almost perfect items as well, thanks to the component anvils from the TF encounter. So Espat, he seemingly is going to be the AP Fast 8 player for AlQadsiah in this tournament. Yesterday as well, he played 1 game of Yumi, 1 game of Karma. He was kind of more of a flex, X-Factor, do the dirty work kind of player in Step 14 in the qualifiers. But in this case now, he seems to be pretty open to playing for the Fast 8 lines. And this is the problem with the Sorcerer line. You lose a lot of HP in Stage 3 to the rerolls. You have to try and stay as healthy as possible, just in case you miss on your roll down. Although he's already up 1 Karma, so pretty good odds he'll hit the 2-star.
So we check in across some of the other bits coming together here. Revenant there. And we do see Bintam, of course, one of the compositions which we didn't get a chance to talk about too much, but definitely had the very good stats coming out of day one. The Jhin, and the Mundo composition, extremely reliable. It's kind of one of the alternate options.
Rabanav already on a Volibear carry, which is not a comp that I would consider meta, but I think it definitely is playable from the right spots. Rabanav, looking at his comps yesterday and the comp he's playing right now, I think is going to be more of an AD flex player, which is Not the easiest lines to play outside of GP in this current meta, but I'm a big fan of these lines, mostly because Mundo's just, I think, a little bit broken. As a tank, he tanks a little bit too much, so he single-handedly enables carries like Jhin and Gnar to do a lot, even the 4 Luchador vertical to get you into Ashe, to get you into TF, to get you into a fast 9 kind of angle that we saw already from Rebanav yesterday, actually.
Well, so let's take a look at the field overall as we get our second power-up in and the boards continue to get stronger. We see that we've actually got a pretty even spread across all the positions. I mean, Flouders, of course, is the big outlier here with the 8-round win streak, but otherwise, HP has been pretty evenly spread. Rebanav, of course, has been taking a lot of the early hits. Crazy moving, definitely taking a lot less HP damage after giving up on the loss streak.
I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but one thing to consider here, we see the Midas Touch being offered for Crazy Moving. It's still stage 3. The moment we get into stage 4, this power-up and a few other gold-generating power-ups are removed from the pool. So obviously you have to use the fruit on someone, the power-up on someone in this last round because you get it at the end of stage 3. But one thing to consider is if you're able to, only tailor for your key power-ups, your game-winning power-ups in stage 4-1 onwards.
Yeah, just having the pool be a little bit smaller can make all of the difference. Flouders, though, continues to be a wrecking ball. Will go up against his teammate this time round, and you certainly have to imagine that T1 are making a little bit of space for Flouders to be able to slightly better matchups, making sure their positioning gets this Kai'Sa stacking and stacking and stacking to hopefully continue to be a massive force.
And the thing with Kai'Sa, the more you're able to dominate the early game, the stronger you are in the late game because she has a scaling kit where each kill gets her more AD on her ability and make sure she gets more kills in the future because she has more AD, etc. It's a loop that never pretty much ends. So this is a very good news for Flouders to be on a 9-win streak, to have such a dominant Kai'Sa, triple itemized since the very beginning of stage 3, and just taking over altogether.
Oh, interesting. So it looks like we're seeing what Rebanav is truly going for here. All out K'Sante. One of the comps we did see get some pretty good stats from the previous day of play. Certainly when it comes to face up against the Gangplank compositions, this is going to deal out some real hurt.
You did say it though, it's all out K'Sante, and you have to find all out on K'Sante, which is not always the easiest task. We'll see if Rebanav can do it with the fruits he has available. He'll roll first, of course, the correct order of things. You can always use your fruits as the fight begins, but he really needs to find specifically the all-out power-up for K'Sante, because with this itemization, he is no longer a tank. He is an AD carry who just flies across the battlefield, just, taking down units one by one, basically. There's a K'Sante 2 as well, a massive upgrade. We miss it here. We're going to tailor action the Leona. Now we're on the K'Sante. Missed the first time. He can't do it again. So he has one more chance after this, and he's already used the power-up on K'Sante now, so the best next unit to use it on is just K'Sante again, basically. And he'll have a few more chances to try and find the correct power-up for this line. He also has heavy as the crown on Akali, which I am a little bit surprised by. The moment the Akali dies, he immediately loses the fight.
I was sure the crown was going to be going on the K'Sante for the reason that he's incredibly hard to put down.
So that, okay, he has 3 augments, so it was one of the Gold Destiny picks. That's why he did not pick that by choice, it looked like to me.
Okay, well, we just only know that it's a risky option that a lot of our teams have been willing to take.
Espat has to roll. He's on Radiant Shojin already. Levels to 8, only 20 gold to roll with. Does he think he's stable enough already is the big question. Holding on to Malphites to deny the crew 3 stars from Crazy Moving.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Crazy Moving's crew, because that's not been something which we've talked about a huge amount as of yet. We do know that statistically the board is very strong. We've even seen it to the point where other teams have been griefing the crew very directly by even playing it themselves, just because they're concerned about how powerful it can get.
I think it's just especially grief-worthy, where if you're not able to snowball off of hitting your first 3-star quickly, like Malphite or Sivir, you're in a very, very bad spot, and the crew it does not perform at all if you don't play it on tempo, basically. So it's just much more susceptible to being griefed, essentially, as a reroll line. Look at the Kai'Sa line here from Flouders. 10 win streak, 1 copy away from that Kai'Sa 3. Would have loved to find it on this roll down to continue the win streak. I would have liked to see him roll down to 10, because the moment he continues winning, he gets enough win streak gold that it doesn't matter if he's only getting 10 or 1 gold from the econ threshold. In this case now, a big matchup against Volta's GP, a big test, right, to see can he match up against the strongest reroll line in the game, and he absolutely can with his scaling Kai'Sa. And
that's with the Kai'Sa 2-star. I mean, we've certainly seen that from yesterday. If you can get enough burst onto that Gangplank, he's certainly not a unit who can sustain himself once that Edge of Night has been popped through.
We're seeing it there. It was Gold Destiny, so randomized pick with extra gold. This is the price you pay, and I am starting to feel very bad for AlQadsiah because yesterday in the series against Vitality, Espat with the GP2 perfectly itemized also picked Gold Destiny. He got Golemify, his entire board disappeared and was fed into one massive golem, but his GPs were also gone in that sacrifice, which means his spot became much, much worse. The same thing has happened now to Rebanav.
So we've got the side-by-side here. There's a good chance to compare Volta and SESC, the two Gangplank players in lobby. Certainly we've been seeing Volta making a big impact early on. They're next to each other on the scoreboard, but the HP is very different. Volta on 66, SESC on 49. Definitely not as powerful. Volta did take the start of the board early on, so he sacrificed for the early power. It seems like things are starting to dip a little bit.
And Volta, I believe, is not really fishing for the 3-star Gangplank. He's playing more of a contest and tempo role instead. He's level 7, 50 gold, and is nowhere close to GP3. So we'll see if that game plan ends up working out. So looking at Rebanav's board here, in this case, the Akali looks to be alive, and she does have Edge of Night now. She does have ways to stay alive for longer. I think Rebanav is now indexing more items and better items onto Akali instead of Cassante because he realizes if she dies, it doesn't matter how strong Cassante is, I'm losing the fight anyway. But a tough situation to navigate for Rebanav again after the AlQadsiah had that trouble yesterday.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated to see where this kind of goes long term. I don't believe the all-in was able to be hit through there, but we can see the rest of the field at the bottom of our screen right now. We can certainly see, of course, Flyers with all the 3 stars locked in place. Of course, we haven't spent a little bit of time looking at the mentors from SCSC as well. We've been quietly building those up with the Gangplank board. You mentioned going to have the extra power from being able to play any amount of mentors and still benefit from the bonuses.
Espat is ahead on the Karma 2 compared to Dunizuni, for example, still on the Karma 1, but a lot of HP for Dunizuni, whereas Espat only has 34. Right now, pretty even across the board in terms of HP. We're seeing, especially Flouters, really carrying the flag for AlQadsiah, buying them a lot of time, taking a lot of pressure off of their shoulders, especially for Rebanav and Espat. My one bigger concern is going to be where Volta goes with his game plan. And if, this GP3 will start taking over from SCSC despite being on a 3-loss streak right now.
I'm keeping a very close eye on how things move forward for Rebanav. As that Gangplank is still pretty terrifying, but in terms of overall approach to how you deal with Gangplank, what do you favor our team's been trying to do? Are you trying to, in this case, as we've seen, try and burst him out, trying to outscale him?
I think Akali has to get as far away as possible because Gangplank will probably one-shot proc the Eon and then next shot will kill Akali off. Rebanav, the first victim of the Gangplank 3 that has now been hit and assembled by SCSC. On the flip side, Crazy Moving also sitting on a TF, also has hit now the Ziggs 3 off of the duplicators he had on his item bench. And this is one of the scary crew spots. When you're hitting everything on tempo, we're not even in stage 5. You have all your 3 stars as well as the TF. You can start looking to go level 8, fit in the Rise, have the Strategist online for all of your backliners, especially the Ziggs, of course. And with Shadow Clone, even more damage coming out from the crew ship, even more value from the Strategist. I mean, overall, just a very good setup here from Crazy Moving.
All right, Rebanav in some major trouble here. Goes up against his teammate in Volta. Oh boy, I do not feel good about the chances. At least Gangplank's been kept out of the equation for a while, but it just doesn't seem like there's enough damage coming through there. Akali's being asked to assassinate, but I just don't think she's got enough punch there to get through. Oh, I'm proven wrong immediately.
These are 2 stars. I think he should be fine against Volta's board here. Volta has not quite hit his cap. I think he's going to start trying to push levels, I assume, for 590 mech, and then we'll see how that ends up panning out. Going back to the start of the game where I mentioned players looking for kind of an X-Factor line to play into and to find success with, I think both Flouters and Crazy Moving have found those lines. The crew for Crazy Moving and the Kaisa reroll for Flouters. They're really the players who are trying to play outside of the meta and find really good results for lines that you don't expect that much from.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised. Certainly, I was expecting to see coming into the event crew being more vulnerable to do down with the Ziggs being contested, just to make it hard to get the full version of the board online, but it does not seem to have been the case so far. As Bintam, of course, we said coming into this one, has been a player whose stats so far in the initial part of the EWC haven't been amazing, but we know his potential is off the charts.
Small roll down here, looking for also very unique game here with this AD flex line, Volibear carry. You had forward thinking, so a lot of extra gold to end up going fast 9 with. You have an Edgelord emblem as well on your Braum. You have a Yone pair, which maybe is not going to be the most relevant, not really the strongest of 5 costs in the current meta, but all in all, a very cool line. Is it going to be strong enough to win out here? Is it going to be strong enough to stabilize on this 19 HP that Bintum currently has? Up against Rebanav, can the Akali snipe the Samira? Can she stay out of harm's way when it comes to Braum and the Volibear is the big question. Rebanav is potentially on just 1 life now.
Yeah, I mean, having the Radiant item, oh boy, that wasn't even a little bit close. Rebanav, you can see the frustration very clear on his face, will be the first one out of the equation. Bintum is on 19 HP, so should be able to hold on for a while. First blood to T1.
Big upgrade for SCSC as well. Everything is looking really, really good for T1 as a team. Even Bintum, the lowest HP player, has stabilized, I think, on a very strong AD line. Rebanav frustrated, and for good reason, right? I mean, Gold Destiny, you know what the risk you're taking by picking it. I think most pro players have established it's always worth it no matter what. There's a very low chance you get griefed. Unfortunately, back-to-back days in a pivotal EWC match, AlQadsiah has been griefed by the augment pickup and by the risk they've taken.
I mean, it absolutely could be the kind of decision that haunts you from that point forwards, but ultimately, I think you're right as well. It was a decision that had to be made one way or the other. We'll see how well the crew does. Crazy moving here up against SCSC. And we can see with the full crew online. Of course, we've got Twisted Fate, who's also been ticking up in power as this goes on. But the Gangplank actually cutting through and deleting most of the backline and hits the Civet as well. This is the crew board at pretty much full power, and Gangplank is still that much better.
Not too concerning of a loss. Both players still fairly healthy on that matchup from T1 side. Bintum's the only one really in the lower totals. Espat and Volta now down. Volta down to maybe just 1 life at this point in time, and Espat close to it as well with his Sork board. Volta, after Espat hit his Karma 2, has now been holding Karma, so Dunizuni cannot hit as easily. So there is, some strategic element of the hold coming in from AlQadsiah.
So, of course, we've got to think about, as we come to the midpoint of Stage 5 in just a moment, if Volta does go out in 7th place, it seems like it's possible that even Flouders winning the lobby will not be enough unless they can land a second player in 2nd place.
And Flouders is not really in a win-out spot. Yes, Kaisa scales a bit more. I don't think it's a comp that can really win out a lobby against something like what Bintum has assembled or against, obviously, the GP board from SCSC. So it would be ideal for Volta and Espat to dodge this 7th place, maybe even the 6th place position, to have better odds of having a better construction of finishes in top 4 for AlQadsiah.
Well, I mean, the possibilities there, as we saw on the right-hand side, it just disappeared. The HP totals are starting to dip very quickly, so we've got very volatile rounds yet to come as our players. Of course, we'll be grabbing completed items and legendaries along the way. Of course, we saw plenty of Gwen being played yesterday and being an absolute menace, but there's so much to consider as we come into what will be very crucial rounds.
Dunizuni wanted a tank item for Swain to finalize his front line, but instead wanted to deny the Gwen from Espat. Both Sork players understanding, of course, what the win condition is. Both Sork players are still sitting on Gwen 1. Actually, no Gwen whatsoever for Espat yet, so would have been a really big pickup to be able to get out of the Ahri and move into the Gwen as a secondary damage carry and move these items from Lux especially right into a 5 cost. A big jump in power for Espat, but not able to do it since Dunizuni is also first pick priority.
Yeah, so we've got Dunizuni and Bintum both on single digits HP as well as Espat. This will change everything. As we talked about many times, we will, of course, across the entirety of today. These early finishes shape the rest of the game so much. SCSC is up at the top, of course, ruling the roost.
Big matchup for AlQadsiah. Items off of Kaisa. There was removers to buy some time for Espat to win this fight. On the side of Dunizuni, not the same priority. Items fully equipped on all of the crew carries and Crazy Moving will be taking down Dunizuni. And Espat here survives thanks to that strategic play from Flouders. So this is what we were talking about. Stage 3, you're rolling down to 10 gold as a 2-cost reroll player. This is why you're doing it. You have the HP to give up to your teammate, to keep him alive, and to then have better positions in the final placements. Volta does go down as well in 6th place position.
Okay, so it's not the worst case scenario here. AlQadsiah, they still got a chance to not necessarily reset everything entirely, but at least go into the second half, well, I say the back half, I suppose, of this game with some amount of options rather than having to get the top 2.
Another pivotal matchup coming up for Espat, who is going to be only on 7 HP. Bintam as well on 10. They are facing each other, so a very important elimination matchup here between the Stork board and the Fast 9 AD Flex board. Can Karma burst down all these beefy and tanky frontline units? There's a Braum, there's a Volibear who's going absolutely crazy, jumping from target to target with Samira backing him up, and that's going to be a big win for Bintam. Espat down in 5th place.
It's
3
not just
players
a big
from
win,
AlQadsiah
it's the game.
in the bottom 4, which means that is going to be game 1 to T1.
Yeah, that is devastating. You can see how little ground there was to get into the top 4, but yeah, T1 have done it. It may only have been by a small amount, but nevertheless, they found some way through. I think particularly for Bintam, it's going to attract some praise for this game for just taking the 6 Edgelord 4 Luchador board, which I don't think we were necessarily expecting to see at all, and do very well with it.
This is where Bintam thrived. This is where maybe some concerns came in for Bintam as a player individually coming into this meta, because he does not want to be a slave to the meta. He does not want to play GP reroll every game. He wants to cook. He wants to play creative. He wants to play around Fast 8, around just flex TFT. And he gets rewarded for this game at least. Braum 2 comes online as well. Overall, a good showcase from Bintam. Clement was asking, Bintam had to come up and perform at a high level today to be the captain for his team, and he absolutely has done so.
All right, so we'll just, of course, just for a little bit of extra discussion time, we will be playing out the rest. So again, bear in mind, the game is done in a mechanical sense. This is, of course, one of the things that teams are always playing to try and avoid. The 3 players in the bottom 4 means you just have no options. I mean, at least, Flydus here gets a little bit more time to discuss. Overall, what's your general feeling coming out of game 1, knowing that this was going to be a high-stakes game?
I think Volta maybe misunderstood his role in terms of playing for more of a tempo GP spot. Maybe just didn't hit many GP. I'm not sure if he just didn't roll on 6 or just opted to play for tempo instead. It didn't quite work out. With Star Jar Born, I'm wondering if he actually did buy that first Kabuko he found in the shop instead of waiting for GP and just kind of not giving as much prio to Kabuko in a tempo option in stage 2. Overall, it's clear SCSC won the Gangplank battle, and whoever wins the Gangplank battle is a big important part of the format in 4v4 right now. Equally so, Rebanev, it's not his fault, but Gold Destiny into Heavy as the Crown doomed his game, ended up being an 8th. I think that was one of the key points in terms of why AlQadsiah lost this game 1.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We saw this from, of course, AlQadsiah's first game as they went into the gamble of playing the same compositions as the opposing side. In that case, against Vitality, it worked out in their favor. In this case, not so much the case. I certainly wouldn't mind seeing how we saw things develop in the Vitality series to see our teams diverge a little bit more. I guess the big question here is, because of course Volta is the player with a massive amount of experience here, what he's able to give to the team in options-wise, and should they even be playing as relatively inexperienced players, playing off of their comfort comps?
Well, Rebanev, I think his all-out spot was good, but just Heavy as the Crown is especially bad for Rebanev because both of his carries are mobile carries who get into danger. This is the whole point of Cassante and Akali. They can deal a lot of damage, they can win fights by themselves, but they're also continuously at the mercy of being targeted, which is why you build things like Edge of Night. With Heavy as the Crown, you usually want to play for a ranged backline carry that does not get into any danger, and the moment he dies, you're losing the fight anyway because your tanks are not going to win the fight by themselves. So really just a terrible outcome for Rebanev as a player.
All right, we'll just wait for these final moments here. You can see, of course, I think this is, particularly playing at the end of this game, it's going to be pretty tough, of course, for AlQadsiah. For T1, then you just kind of get to walk out the rest of this one, enjoy these moments as well-earned victory. AlQadsiah, they're just going to be stewing at this point. And I have to imagine, if the tables were turned, T1 have certainly got the experience there to be able to shrug off losses, I'd imagine, a lot more cleanly than AlQadsiah ever would.
In the game here from Crazy Moving, we're seeing he's even stronger than the GP reroll board, and this is what I was talking about in terms of X factors. Finding a condition that enables a comp to rise from mediocre or B tier into S tier or game-winning territory. Treasure Hunt is exactly that. With the crew, you want to reroll every single stage of the game essentially, and Treasure Hunt rewards you for doing so. So it's a match made in heaven. Crazy Moving had great tempo across stage 3, across stage 4, and has now hit a cap that you would not be able to hit in a normal crew game.
So, if you're on AlQadsiah's shoes, you know you're going to game 2, you know this is an elimination, of course, you're going to be seeing your key getting crushed in front of your eyes if you don't turn things around. What kind of approach would you expect them to be wanting to take for game 2?
No more gold Destiny augment pickups, please. Third time is not the charm. Trust me, guys. Already 2 times in a row, they've had game-losing, results off of the augment pickup. Maybe it's time. It's not time to test it for the 3rd time. All in all, I think just look for spots to play. Conditional comps from stronger spots. We saw Teachers Council for the GP board. We saw Treasure Hunt for Crazy Movings board, and we're seeing exactly these 2 players in the top 2. So if you can find these really, really strong 2-1 augments to give you direction, that's going to be a pivotal part of this 4v4 format.
All right, there we go. Crazy Moving, the new player on the T1 roster, will take the honors there in 1st place. As we do see the 1st game of the 2nd day of the TFT at the EWC here. 1 more loss, AlQadsiah will be gone from the competition, and T1 could well start their climb back to try and get back to the grand finals again and challenge for the crown.
And for Bintum especially, really important for him to play. I think Crazy Moving and SCSC obviously finished in 1st and 2nd, but they had the easier, more standard games. Just press D, buy the units you need to buy, make the right itemization choices, and play your reroll lines as expected. Bintum had the hardest game to play. He played around an 80 flex line that is not considered the strongest in the meta. It is hard to make work. He found all the right upgrades. He found all the right times to level up, to continue adding pivotal units to his board. He knew how to itemize his Braum in the end to be so impactful, and only finished, I believe it was 3rd in the end, but that 3rd is what really made it shine the most, I would say.
All right, guys. Well, of course, we've got at least 1 more game to come from this series, but we've got the best analysts in the business to break down everything that happened and prepare us for what will surely be an astounding Game 2 as well. So, Ginny and friends, let us know how it all happened.
The best analyst in the business. Okay, guys, that's just some very high words of praise, but a really, really strong start here that we're seeing, Clement, from the side of T1, and we touched upon it earlier. You really did, where you're like, okay, I really want to see Bintum, perform well. I want to see him take on that role as the captain and see him come to light, and feels like we have.
Yeah, it was a beautiful fake out between him and Rebanov because he had forward thinking and he could only spend his gold on 4-2. Rebanov rush leveled and then rolled all of his gold to deny Bintum the all-out composition. He thought that was the comp he was going to go for, and Bintum was like, you know what? Actually, I'm playing Volibear. I can shift those items over. I can shift and play a comp that you have never seen before, and this is why I cherish him so much. This is what he's known for. When he's low rolling, when he's contested, he can always pull something out of his bag.
Yeah, that's the X factor, right? Because XCSC played perfect with the GP that is expected, taking a 2nd place, but you need the other players to outperform, getting something additional. So Crazy Moving for me was the surprise with the crew, having everything perfect, using Treasure Hunt to roll in good intervals and get an amazing position, and at the end getting also in level 8 very quickly the Twisted Fate.
Oh, you got it on level 7.
Okay, well, just high rolling his way to the victory, but I mean that's the X factor that you need. So great placement right now for T1, being the favorites right now, starting the series.
Yeah, speaking of great placement and favorites, Volta was a player that you also touch upon, where we're like, okay, we've seen him do well against that series against Vitality, but this is he went out 2nd in this game specifically, which I don't think is something that we genuinely expected when it comes to AlQadsiah.
Yeah, he was contesting the GP line, but he tried to play a tempo first, starting with a Syndra. I mean, it was interesting. I saw it. I was like, okay, good Volta scenario, but then he rolled down deep on stage 3 and didn't hit. So you need to hit. You need help from the team. You need help for the game sometimes, and it wasn't the game for Volta right now.
I don't think he had the econ to go all in. If you had a full win streak on stage 2, maybe that was the play, but he went all in. He didn't have the streaks. He only had 2 game planks in that, rolled down to 10 gold, and that's when the SCSE was able to overtake him completely. So I think in general, it was basically QAD. They went in with a lot of steam, but they couldn't continue it, and it was really smart from T1. They said, hey, there's only 1 player with a high cap on the enemy team. That's going to be S-Pot on the Sorks. Dooney Juni, you're going to go 7th place, but just contest him, and the game's over.
Yeah, the strategy from T1, it just felt like the team has really worked together, and I think learned quite a bit from their unluckiness or mistakes, whatever you want to call it, from yesterday. AlQadsiah, though, they didn't necessarily show what we saw against Vitality yesterday, where we saw them really going for that GP. So, I mean, Game 1, Series 1, you still have potentially 2 more maps, so adaptation here is going to be very crucial.
Yeah, 100%. I love to see Flowers with a 4th place playing the Kaisa that we know is not prevalent in the meta, but making a huge run, making a huge win. But, I mean, the rest of the team also need to perform here. We've seen one of the last battle here. Enjoying the crew. See the battleship. This is so good. When you have the 5 crew in, the battleship is just doing all the damage for you.
It's absolutely crazy for the crew to get Treasure Hunt as well. It's basically a prismatic, and he also got the best rolls from those hunts. He got the 2 extra Nico duplicators early on to just get that in early.
Yeah, and for T1, this is exactly what we wanted to see. We wanted them to hit the ground running. We wanted them to start off strong, especially considering that this is like potentially the final game that we're going to be looking at. AlQadsiah, though, moving forward, moving into that next match, what do you think they need to focus on a little bit more to give themselves a fighting chance?
I mean, the sword battle wasn't important right now because it wasn't the priority. We saw many players in the early game trying to go for the GP line. In the end, it was only Volta and CSC. I think, of course, that's the priority line, but we have seen that you cannot contest like 2 versus 2, that we thought it was a possibility. So one player in each team needs to play the GP, and then you need to find the scenario in the early game to play something uncontested or at least in a good position. I think that's the reasoning that should be from now on.
I'm just going to echo Panda here. No more Golden Destinies. It has been atrocious for QAD. Both times they pick it, you knew that player was going to go 7th or 8th. It's just, I think in 4v4 environment, it's a little bit too hard to control. You have to pivot out of your established comp sometimes, and that just messes up the entire strategy.
For T1 side of things, though, I mean, they are looking really strong on they won the first match as well, which is always great for their side of things. But they got to keep themselves composed and keep themselves locked in. And I do think, again, a little bit of pressure because it is a T1 organization. They are also a giant in the TFT scene. And on top of that, a couple of club championship points on the line. How do they stay locked in? Because it's very easy to potentially lose sight of the bigger picture and go, okay, we won first match. We can take our foot off the gas.
Yeah, 100%. I think they have experience. When we see Vintium, we see him slightly laughing, but he's very cold-minded. He's actually enjoying, and I think the fact that it worked out for him, going level 9, getting legendary scene, playing a flexible board, I think that's perfect for his mental. They know exactly what the meta is, they know what they have to look for, but just the chance that the X Factor is actually working against for them, I think in meta-wise, mental-wise, they're okay, they're cool. They just need to have a little luck in the game once again and outperform the rest.
The most important thing for them is win out augments, because they are a team that actually likes to lose streak and then find their ace from those lose streakers. In this meta, you have to have the correct augments to do so. Treasure Hunt was a great opportunity right there. Forward Thinking was another opportunity. So they have to hunt really, really deep for those specific win out augments.
Yeah, and when it comes to the next matchup, I mean, AlQadsiah also, they have to lock in here because, again, this is their opportunity to slay another giant, to prove themselves worthy here. And we already touched upon a little bit in terms of what we want to see them change when it comes to this next matchup. But do we think that their meta read is maybe a little bit different than the Korean team that we're seeing here?
I mean, they're risking a little more, but it's working. For example, Kaisa, I want to mention it again, a good top 4. Volta tried to play something flexible into the meta. Maybe that was the reasoning, but I mean, if you don't have the best option in the early game, you have to be a little creative in the game. And that's normally recognized and not always gets you the best performance. But sometimes you just have to play the cards that the game is giving you. If the cards are not great, you need a little magic, a little luck, and then try to outperform.
For me, from all the games that we've seen, they try to put the gas to the pedal right at the start of the game, and then they kind of run out of fuel later on. So I want to see if they try to focus in on a win-out player early in Stage 2. If they can identify who's going to be the ace who can carry route, you can play around that. But for this game, for instance, they took a lot of early augments, 2 tricks, Crimea River on an 80 carry. That didn't really work out for them. So either you're going to have to find those stacking augments if you want to play this style, or you have to identify a win-out.
Yeah, they're risking, but it didn't work. For example, Revenant, he tried to play Crystal Gambi in the start, and then do economy, then pivot to Boulevard, then try to play AlQadsiah. I mean, it's just too much to try to go for. So in the end, maybe as you said, try to look for that initial path and stay consistent to it.
Are there any individual players then that you think they should really focus on when it comes to putting them in that ace position?
Well, historically, you have to look at Volta. He's the only one that's been to attack crown, and in terms of individual pedigree, he is miles above the rest of his teammates. So far, we've seen him just rolling down super hard, being the GP contest. I would say that's a bit of a wasteful for his talents.
So what would you do instead then if you were, say you're in that coaching room right now, AlQadsiah, and you have to come up with a game plan because this is it, right? This is that if you lose the next game, you're out. What would your speech be?
Volta, you are the French pride, the French boar. You have gone through so many Pandora's benches and just pulled 3-star forecasts out of your sleeves. So trust, you can do it again. You have to be the ace. We're not letting you play contested GP. You have to carry the team. It's all on you. It's all here right now.
Okay, that's actually pretty good. Like that got me hyped. If I was, if I was Volta, I'd be like, yeah, I agree. You're so right. That's exactly what we're gonna do. T1 on the other side, they are looking really pretty. So this is the game where we can potentially see a little bit more experiments from them.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what the game gives you, right? If you have a possibility, we're already seeing that Katarina is not performing, but is also got a good placement if you manage to achieve. We're seeing players right now on the stage. They're so happy to be here. I love the rundown in the beginning, Genie, where they were like waving the crowd, just laughing, having a good time. And now they're in the pause, so we're just about to start the game, and they're totally locked in.
Yeah, I think as well, a little bit of a different environment for these players, right? When it is playing on the LAN, and also you can just like peek over your monitor and like you can see what your opponent is feeling or thinking.
You want to do some hand gestures with them?
Do you think? Do you think we'll get TFT players that are doing hand gestures here, Jupson?
We saw a little like BM on the start, maybe with Dan memes, the rest. We haven't seen it on stage. It's a possibility. I feel it would be interesting, especially in the later stages. But for now, I mean, they need to lock in. TFT is a very cold-minded game, if you will. So even though it's a teamwork, individual scenario and mental is so important.
Yeah, and we are absolutely ready to head into the second match. This is AlQadsiah's chance to prove whether or not the Titan Slayer title actually is good for them, or whether T1 is going to have this as a pretty clean 2-0. Let's head over to our casters.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Let's say this is going to be a huge moment. You know, a formation of history here. AlQadsiah, you talked about it before, David. You know, it's such a long journey for these teams to get to this point, but the pressure is on them. And of course, we both saw T1 wandering the corridors between the games. They certainly, to me, they seemed like there was kind of a sense, you know, happy, but a sense of relief from them as well. For a tournament that hasn't necessarily been going great for them so far, to now finally have that game in hand, a little bit of sense of safety.
And moving into game 2, we will be having Yuumi as our encounter, so some extra bonus loot, and this enables certain comps that are very gold hungry, that are very resource hungry. Kayle reroll is on my mind in terms of having a lot of this extra gold to try and potentially get your 3-star Kayle and make it to 9. Also just fast 9 comps in general. There is a new meta comp that is rising with TF and Ashe and Juggernauts, specifically with Frost Touch as the power-up. And the second version with both Frost Touch on both Ashe and TF. I believe you get damage on hits, 55 magic damage per hit, and these are both champions that hit a lot.
Sure.
So it's actually very, very strong in the late game if you have enough gold to make it. It's incredibly expensive comp though, so we'll see if maybe someone like Bintum tries to navigate that line at some point in this tournament.
Well, of course, I do want to follow up on what they're talking about on the analyst desk as well. Of course, we heard the impassioned plea from Clement to put Volta up front and center as the win-out player. Ultimately, with AlQadsiah only managing to get one player into the top 4 in that previous game at all, are you of a similar mind?
I am, especially considering that Volta individually in TFT outside of the 4v4 format, he has a very long career, and in that long career, I believe in the last 5 sets, he is the player with the highest win rate out of any region when it comes to cups, your regional finals, etc. So he's a player that definitely knows how to win. Some would say he's lucky. I would say he is very skilled after 6 years of just winning and winning and winning. We'll see if he can do it now in a pivotal game 2. And as we mentioned, Kayle potentially going to be one of the lines that will be explored a little bit more in this high gold econ portal. And Zach 2, Aatrox 2, some front line to maybe not bleed so much as well in this early stage, but you at least want to make 10 gold here.
Well, talk to me about the Kayle comp, because again, we've talked about it before coming into this one. The stats for it were atrocious, as we'll be starting off with the silver ornament. So we know we've got gold coming in, we've got silver destiny.
Do not do it.
Look at his eyes, look at his face, and see, is he going to take that choice?
He's saying, guys, third time is a charm.
I mean, you haven't got a lot to lose at this point, I suppose. No, he re-rolls it.
There we go. That is called learning from your, let's not call them mistakes, but learning from the stones you've tripped on already. Component buffet, Pandora's Bench. Pandora's Bench is an easy way to almost guarantee you're hitting your Kayle 3. Not just that, this is thematically appropriate for AlQadsiah because they are all French players, and Nemia, we like to call this augment the French bench, especially Volta has done some crazy things with this augment across every single set of TFT. We'll see if Rabanath can do the same.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes without saying. Of course, Volta's been imparting his wisdom across the team overall, so it's reasonable to think that the style of every player on the squad is going to be heavily influenced by just the way he plays TFT.
And Kayle, going back to your question, is a specific comp that she's a very weak unit, maybe the weakest unit in stage 3. When you level to 6, especially with a 3-star Kayle, she ascends. She gets an extra line of text on her ability. she starts dealing more damage, she starts shredding as well, and she becomes a much stronger carry. When you make it to level 9, she ascends another time. She starts dishing out huge waves, AoE attacks basically, and with Rage Blade and when she's 3-starred, she becomes very, very strong. The peril with this strategy is you're re-rolling on 3-1, sometimes down to 20 gold to hit your 3-star, and then you have to make it to level 9. Usually this is not possible in a game of TFT. You don't have enough gold to do so. It's very, very hard. You'll die on the way. But with an encounter like this, it is definitely much more possible, especially with Pandora's Bench, to kind of sneak your way into a 3-star much earlier.
So if we're kind of putting that together with what we were talking about already, if we want Volta to be a winning out player, a KO composition alongside it seems like a pretty decent candidate for being able to get another player into the top 4 and start to put together an overall game plan.
It's definitely, like Clement was saying, trying to find someone who has that win-out potential, and I think that's definitely going to be a possibility here now for Rebanav and for a few of the other players. We're seeing Latent Forge as well as one of the options for one of the AlQadsiah players, for Flouters. We know how strong artifacts are. We're looking at an AP build on this Lucian now, so trying to get this Latent Forge artifact, potentially pop it on stage 4 to eliminate the gold generating artifacts, and try and hit a Mana Zane for Karma, try and hit a Blighting Jewel for Karma, trying to hit any range extension artifacts for Gwen, for example, Sniper's Focus, RFC. There's a lot of very, very strong hits. Even something like Horizon Focus on Jarvan is okay. So another potential game-winning player if he's able to high roll.
No, absolutely. I mean, certainly, Flouters, I think, did acquit himself extremely well in Game 1. It felt like, well, he wasn't in necessarily a position to win out. I think just because of the, what we've seen from the Kaiser Cup before, it wasn't a win out board, but it was probably one of the strongest parts of AlQadsiah's game. Of course, Dooney Zuni has got the great setup to start off, the Kraken Slayer as well, to make sure that this Gangplank will hit like a truck. He's double strike, he's not stretchy arms, so he's not going to be able to reach all areas, but he's still going to be a massive force in the early going, especially alongside the Mighty Mech.
It's not a major concern. I would say Stretchy Arms is not the best in slot in stage 2 and 3, but having it, obviously insta-pick if it's offered, because you save yourself from having that little dance where you just don't find it at all in stage 4.
Yes.
We're seeing again the Hodges Slam, not because Hodges is best in slot for Gangplank, just because obviously you want to have as much stats and as many items on Gangplank as early as possible, so you can start snowballing those kills, snowballing that gold, put you in a better econ position to hit.
I do want to take a moment just to recognize here, we saw this from Volta in the previous game as well, bringing out the Neferi as a early game unit. We saw, of course, the Syndra filling the same sort of spot as before. Volta isn't necessarily, as you can see, coming through and getting the win streak early on, but he's trying to keep his board strong.
First carousel coming through. Young, wild, and free is crazy moving. Appropriate name in this case. He is moving real crazy, I'm going to say, with that little legend. Just an absolute walk with aura and able to pick up a bow, which we talked about is going to be so important for our AD players, especially our Gangplank players. In this case, we're seeing Espat currently carrying a Sivir with a Rageblade Slam, an open sword, and an open cloak. Most likely is indicating he is going to be the Gangplank player for AlQadsiah in this game too.
Oh yeah, I mean, of course it goes without question. We're going to be having one on either side of things. We'll keep on scouting around and seeing what we've got going on here. Of course, Dooney Zuni remains undefeated for the time being, as I believe, Crazy Moving is able to keep that going as well. So 2 win streaky players is absolutely wild for T1. Again, considering they're 1 game ahead in the series, all they need to do is win out here, and they will move on and eliminate the first team of the entire competition.
Crazy moving in a very interesting spot. He is holding options for both the Sork board and the Sork game plan, as well as Prodigies. He has an Ari pair, which is making his life a little bit difficult in terms of committing to one or the other. He's also holding the Lucian and the Aatroxes for the Mighty Mech Sorcerer mid game. So depending on what his shop's natural, as long as he has the Garen pair, so many different pairs and so many different options, I think maybe the next shop will give him some more direction and some better decision in terms of what comp to go for in stage 4.
So I want to take us out to the big picture a little bit here, because as we will see, both win streaks are going to remain intact for T1. How does this going to affect the rest of the game, being that T1 have been so aggressive and so present in the early going?
It doesn't say much because it's what Clement was saying, right? The moment you are identifying a win condition player, this win condition player is usually not also dominating the early game. This is not how it works in TFT. You're either sacrificing something to then come out ahead at some stage of the game. Someone like Flouters is down in Augment. He has no Latent Forge Anvil until 3-5, basically, so he's expected to lose. Someone like Rebanav, who's playing for Kale, he's not hitting the 3-star kill yet. You're expected to sack most of your stage 2 as well. So it comes down to near the end of stage 3, we'll have a much clearer picture of what kind of possibilities these win-out players have, and then we'll understand where the match is going in stage 4.
Well, this is going to be an important round because AlQadsiah have got both loss streaks, T1 have got both win streaks, so they're facing up against each other. And you know, at this point, they had to know this was going to be a possibility and had to make the decision which one of us can benefit most from having that extra gold.
I think you just still play strongest board. There's no real reason for weakening board or trying to pick one player to win in stage 2. It's just whoever's strongest is strongest. That's all there is to it. Ideally, you obviously win or lose by as many or as little units as possible to deal less damage to each other, but that's really the only condition to think of coming into this one. Looking at the Kale here, a lot of Zacs, great, let's celebrate, but only the 3 kills for now. The idea is you don't care as much about econ, you really just care about having 3 2-star 1-cost to continue rolling across the entire game. You can even consider not rolling as much, or in some cases, depending on how close you are at all, and just starting to push levels and hope that at some point in stage 3 or 4, you'll get the 3-star kill.
Well, to follow up on the point you were saying from before, that seems like if you can, or if you want to go for that, you are, of course, leaving yourself up to RNG somewhat, you know, as to when the KLs or if the KLs arrive, but it does feel like it covers for that weakness that you're talking about before of having to be pulled in 2 different directions, the reroll and the vertical.
Personally, I would roll for 6 copies of Kill, naturally, and then have those last 3 copies come immediately from 1 roll on Pandora's bench. But we'll see what the adaptation will be here from Rebanav. 69 gold to work with, making sure he has all his items and his units in order, and then starting to roll. We're seeing for Espat, he is actually committing to crew reroll, taking a page out of Crazy Moving's book. And this is really big for another reason. The moment you're trying to go for Sivir 3 and Malphite 3, you're taking 1 cost out of the pool for the player who's rolling for Kale. And we're seeing Rebanav waiting to roll until Espat has finished rolling to have better chances of finding the kills he needs to find his 3-star. So really clean team play from our competitors from AlQadsiah.
Yeah, though I really like this. I'm definitely feeling a lot more confident based on what we've been talking about so far. It's Bintum on the other side. Yeah, the Viego. All right, I mean, I'm absolutely here for it. We can see it's certainly, at this point at least, being a great item carrier for some of the units later on. We're talking about the 5 cost coming in. I mean, for the time being, you can see, with Edge of Night as well, he does a lot of work to keep pushing through.
And Bintum did pick up Pocket Recombobulator as his first augment, which essentially recombobulates only 1 unit instead of your entire board. And if you're able to hit a certain 3-star, you can then continue upgrading it basically. And it is now Viego 3, which will absolutely take over stage 3 and potentially stage 4. Ideally played into either Soul Fighters because you're not really forced to roll more, so you can play more for a vertical, or into Duelist reroll, but I'm not sure how much success Duelist reroll will have, although Viego 3 is a great unit in and of itself.
Well, this was one of the things I was certainly thinking about coming into day 2, you know, in terms of ways to be able to deal with a Gangplank board, to have, you know, of course, the problem normally is your carries on the backline, your carries kind of weak. As the 3-star Kale comes in, apparently the French bench is operating as intended. 3-star Zac, 3-star Kale. I'm starting to feel more optimistic, David.
And because of the immediate spike you get on level 6, goes to level 6 right away the moment you hit the kill. You're above 30 gold thanks to the econ portal we're in. And this is a really, really good setup. We're going to have to see now if really what all you do now is just continuously level up and try and outposition your opponents when your kill is still slightly weaker. At level 9, there will be a massive spike, and this comp, with the right setup in terms of the augments, can potentially win the game as well.
You see on the other side, Volt, of course, will be a Gangplank player for the game. You see his itemization is very crisp indeed. I did wonder, yeah, with how powerful suddenly Rebanav has come, if it would take a little, maybe a few rounds to start putting this Kale in pole position, but it's good enough right now. I love seeing the Edge of Night in there as well, combined with the Gwynsu's Rage Blade to make sure the Kale survives to the very end.
Bintum here, because he was rolling anyway, he decided to contest the Malphites to make life more difficult for Espat, who is the crew player. We're seeing more players who are saying, oh, everyone's rolling one cost? Sure, I'll join the party as well and make sure that I have better chances of hitting my Gnar, even if I've leveled to 6, for example, like we're seeing here, and this is, I think, the right play. For a Gnar reroll, you don't want to index so much on Gnar. Gnar is kind of like a freebie. If you hit him on level 6, fantastic, but he's not someone that kind of makes or breaks your comp like Kale is, for example.
Oh no, not even remotely the same, but I certainly like what we've got going on from Bintum with the 4 Soul Fighter in place as well, and the full 3-item Viego. I think it's going to be very hard for some of these boards to actually get rid of him because he, again, does a ton of damage. We'll see how it goes face to face. I mean, the Gnar could potentially get onto him early on, but he said, he's so powerful already. I think maybe this could be one of the cases. Plus, once the Edge of Night procs, it makes things awkward, but there's a lot of CC in here, and one thing he doesn't have is a Quicksilver.
He's coming, watch out.
Oh.
The Luchador procs will help a lot. The stuns from the Shadow Clones win the fight, essentially.
Easy.
So really, really clutch positioning and outcome there from SCSC and his Gnar. This is why Luchador and Gnar are quite strong in the meta right now, against melee carries especially.
All right, but it gets the job done. So, again, so let's take a look at some of the other comps. Of course, we can see Espat round up. We've got the crew coming together there. We mentioned, of course, the Malphite being contested. Espat has got the Sivir and the Malphite up to 3-star respectively, so that crew is officially online. You're getting the extra XP, you're getting the extra reroll per turn. You've got a lot more space to work with.
Big player to look at now will be Flouters. He is, of course, the player with Latent Forge. He's going to get an Artifact Anvil 8 rounds after he picked the Augment on 2-1. So now on 3-5, he'll have the option to pick one of his artifacts. Potentially, Flouters might decide to prolong the decision, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, because with Artifact Anvils especially, not any other orbs or any other artifacts you get outside of Anvils, if you pick them or you open the Anvil on stage 4, the game eliminates any gold-generating artifacts that are no longer really as viable or relevant. Things like Mogul's Mail, Gambler's Blade are no longer in the selection, so you have a much higher chance of hitting the best in slot. Mana's Aim, Lighting Jewel, Sniper's Focus, etc.
Yeah, very much the same idea as what we're talking about. As we do see the Zhonya's in place there as well. Okay, so talk to me about some of the routes we can go here. We know we've got AP itemization. We've now got a very powerful invincibility frames from the Zhonya's in play. Well, ideally for Flouters, where do you want to see him angling now?
It's just Karma. Sorks, you put the Zhonya's on to Gwen, essentially acts as a better Edge of Night. Is it game-winning? Not necessarily by itself. I would say it's a kind of middle-of-the-pack pickup. It's not a huge high roll, it's not a low roll either. It's an okay pickup. The key thing is, do you find a Gwen early enough to make it useful? Of course, it's okay on Karma, but Karma, she wants to be more bursty in her damage. She doesn't really care much about surviving because fights end so quickly.
No, sure, but certainly the Zhonya's could be a huge source of frustration as Dunizuni is continuing to, of course, push through and try and find more gangplanks. So far, has been finding a lot more of other units than the ones he's looking for. So Dunizuni, certainly HP-wise, he's doing very well. Golden the Bank, he's doing well as well. But Espat is currently leading the pack. The 5-win streak is giving a lot more hope again for AlQadsiah in a must-win game.
And Dunizuni holding some Aatrox this year because Flouters, or Revenant rather, was still trying to find Aatrox 3 as an extra little beefy tank for his kill setup off of Pandora's Bench. So players really trying to min-max and really trying to mess with the game plans of their opponents. Espat here taking a page from a Crazy Moving's book, playing into the crew reroll, has the 1 cost already, is still of course very far away from Shen and from Ziggs. But this is a comp that I think also makes very good use of extra resources and loot from an encounter like this one.
Yeah, well, so certainly my thought coming into the entire event with the crew is we've already seen, the 1 cost for contestants, so obviously it's on the mind of T1 to try and deny it. When it comes to 3 costs and Ziggs, presumably if a team puts priority on denying that 3 cost, you're never going to 3-star him and bring the crew online fully.
Yes, but it's a lot of gold. It's way more gold to contest a 3 cost than it is to contest a 1 cost, and you have so many resources to hit with the crew, with the free rolls, and with obviously this encounter, you have all this extra gold as well. So it's just much harder to contain. 2 cost is cheaper, and GP you want to use on your board, even if you're not playing GP, because he's just very good at farming gold and good on any AD flex board on the way to Fast 8, Fast 9. Whereas Ziggs doesn't really find a home on any board other than the crew, so it's harder to make use of that gold kind of stuck on your bench.
Well, speaking of contesting, we're going to do our gangplank clock for right now. We can see that there's a 2-star on the board. And we've got 4 more on the bench for Dunizuni. Volta, unfortunately, a little bit behind the curve, but does at least have the money in the bank to maybe spend out.
APM, let's see it.
Again, thanks to, of course, anyway, our observer for keeping us absolutely on top of everything that's happening here. If we do, it's looking like right now Dunizuni is the one who's going to have to step forward and probably get the 3-star if he wants it. And Volta could end up massively far behind.
And Volta has again decided to not really commit to rolling a lot of his gold quickly, allows Dunizuni to get in under him in terms of finding copies of GP a little bit faster. We're looking at the final power-ups and itemizations. We're seeing the Mundos being held here as well from Volta, trying to deny the game plan from some of the other T1 competitors.
All right, checking in with Crazy moving as we are starting to see the AP boards coming together as well.
Dunizuni missed Stretchy Arms, so we're going to have to continue fishing for it in the rest of this stage 4 with all of his power-ups.
Well, we do get to see again really the one weak point for the Gangplank there. With the Ari in there, even perhaps temporarily, be able to burst through him. The survivability just isn't there otherwise, and perhaps this could be a lobby where Gangplank is a little less relevant than it has
Huge win for Espat, doesn't get it. The final kill from the Jin ends the win streak here from Espat, which is so important for continuously generating that gold. We're seeing 1 away from the Mundo, 3 with the Mogul's Mill as well for SCSC, so Volta understandably denying 3 copies at that point in time. Final augment comes through, some fireboard from Espat to try and get some anti-heal effects onto this board now.
And we are 1 Gangplank away. I think, we're going to commit in everything. Of course, we know the 2-star version is a nightmare. The 3-star version is doubly so. Do you want to take a second as we wait to see if the Gangplank will be pushed for and found? There we go. So do we know Dunizuni is going to be absolutely rolling up in this lobby? Just a quick reminder of the stat there, a 42% win rate on this comp, and the 3-star version definitely puts us into that area.
Another switch of fruits, another miss. No Stretchy Arms has been found. And Dunizuni will have to continue fishing for the best in slots. That really warps the way that this GP works. I think it's okay with Tiny Terror as a secondary plan B option, but with this high attack speed and the build with Rage Blade and Kraken's Fury, you really want Stretchy Arms to essentially act as a backline carry instead of a frontline carry and not get into any danger, have no need for really the defensive stats that you would need otherwise.
Yeah, well, there's no defensive items on the Gangplank, but this time he gets away with it. Well, I suppose the Sterax to an extent, but acting as a substitute for Edge of Night. I do want to take a second just to recognize kind of where we are, because of course we saw Espat dropping down before, but Revnab is, well, I was going to say, is rising up. Didn't lose this.
You jinxed him.
That previous round. The second I noticed it, I just close my eyes for the entire rest of the game. The Crazy moving. That is our first Gwen out onto the field.
So we're seeing here the comparison. It is going to be Karma 2 already for Flounder, so he's ahead when it comes to the 4-cost carries. When it comes to the 5-cost, though, it's only going to be 1 copy of Gwen for Flounders, 2 copies for Crazy Moving. And Crazy Moving has hit the better artifact, I would say, in terms of the range extension with Fishbones, although not quite the best in slot with things like Sniper's Focus, for example.
Oh, sure, but I mean, it's still keeping Gwen out of trouble, which I think is going to be the main thing. You can see her AoE is absolutely ludicrous. I just say the point of comparison between the two, the Crazy Moving is out of cash. We really could use to get some round wins in here. I think the Jin on the backside won't be quite good enough this time. We've got the Mondo who's be able to be, of course, a real pest for Karma comes, but it won't be enough this time.
No Declaw, only a Bramble on that Mundo, so going to be a little bit less survivable against all this AP damage coming through. Bintum utilizing that Viego to great effect here. Again, preserving a lot of HP in stage 3 and 4. That's the game plan for Bintum in this game. Crazy Moving is once again moving crazily, finds the Cassante right away, finds the BF sword maybe more importantly.
So I do want to, well, of course, we'll make a little bit more sense when we come back off of this carousel. But I do want to note that the, in the overall game, AlQadsiah, they've got 2 players in the bottom 2 at the moment. So as we move through the game, of course, we'll be locking in all those win conditions a lot more. And right now, things have been looking okay for AlQadsiah. But if they lose this game, they're out of the competition, and it's still very far from safety.
1 away from Ziggs 3 is very good news for Espat,
Wow.
and there is the hit. Now we're going to start moving towards level 8. It's going to try and start finding, instead of this Bastion, the Xin Zhao, try and move towards the Strategist instead, having Ziggs as a more of a primary carry. Finding something like a Rise and a Jarvan will be huge on level 8, and especially an early TF. I'm really curious to see Revenev's spot. I want to see where this kill is, how far away Revenev is from level 9. I'd expect definitely by stage 5 we're making it there with the extra gold injection from PvE, but maybe even before then. That being said, we're healthy, right? 50 HP is a very good spot to be in for kill reroll at this stage of the game. We're seeing he's level 8, above 50 gold, so should be very, very close.
Yeah, and I like the item setup there as well. We've got the crit coming in from Orgwin, so everything seems to be coming together. I mean, so we've got the crew, we've got the kill, we've got 2 very good pieces of news for AlQadsiah overall in this game. As you can see, it's not enough to stand up to the crew as it stands because, of course, their front line is so ridiculously bulky.
And this is pretty much the highest point, the cap point for most games of the crew when you're hitting your final 3-star, whereas Rebenev is still a few steps away from his real big power spike on level 9. One more thing to mention with Pandora's Bench. Most players consider, oh, Pandora's Bench, it's great for a reroll. I can hit my 3-star earlier. Fantastic. But in the hands of truly experienced and skilled players, Pandora's Bench is a win condition as well.
Yeah.
The moment you get into the 4 and 5 cost territory, if you're lucky and if you're playing the game correctly and you have enough gold to work with, you can try and fish for a 3-star 4 cost to accompany Kale into a win. You can try and scout and see which copy is not contested and either hit or force the opposing team, T1, to spend a lot of their gold holding 4 costs to deny that possibility.
I do want to again bring to the front of attention though, Volta of course has been working with the Gangplank for a while, of course doesn't have the Gangplank 3 that his opposite number has, but Volta and Flouders are both very low on HP. I can't help shaking the feeling that we're looking at a potential 7th and 8th. Literally, Volta, you can see, just getting pushed out of this game quite quickly. He'll have 1 more life left in the tank, but I don't see too many signs of him coming back stronger.
For those concerned AlQadsiah viewers, that was not Pandora's Bench, that was backup dancers on the right side of those 3 spots, so he's not rolling GPs. They're being used as a way to get combat strength onto the board with the extra attack speed. We'll see if Volta can hit after the gold injection comes in through. We'll see if it even matters at this point in time, considering that he is only on 2 HP. Gwen 2 has been found for crazy moving. A huge, huge upgrade despite only having Karma 1. And he is laughing because he knows that this Fishbones Gwen is a win condition in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, and now she's going to start, well, presumably she's going to end up with 3 items by the end of the round. We saw before, she was hitting the board, not doing a ton of damage. That's going to change in a hurry. And it just seems like there's so few options of being able to deal with her.
This is the win condition that Rebenev, or Flouders rather, was looking for with his Artifact Anvil. Instead he found Zanya, which is good for having Gwen survive for longer, but it's not good for Gwen just auto-winning some matchups if she's able to cast her full 3 attack cast 2 times.
So again, taking the big picture in, we've got 2 members of AlQadsiah in the bottom 2 right now, and 2 members of T1 on win streaks up at the top. It seems like it's coming together here for T1 to reset their taunt and start moving up through the lower bracket, but it's not completely done as of yet. I think for Volta though, he's going to be moving into a more advisory role very soon.
And Volta has not hit the GP, has spent all of his gold. It's down to his last life. Espat has not removed items, it looks like, as well. So Volta has been sacrificed. His spot is just too doomed to save at this point in time, it looks like. And the high-level play we were hoping for from Volta, instead he's relegated to this GP reroll yet again. And once again, it does not work out for a player who usually always ends up hitting. You're always surprised about, you're always thinking, how did he end up doing this? But not the case in this game 2 for Volta. We'll see if his team can instead carry him through and force a game 3.
I suppose the good news, as we've talked about in 4v4 before, when a player like Volta with an absolute wealth of experience goes out, it does free him up to operate entirely strategically for the team and to start, really focusing on giving direction and optimizing the play coming in. So it's not all done and dusted, but if we do see another AlQadsiah player going out in 7th, then of course, as before, a 1st and 2nd will be required to course correct.
And Flouders, we're seeing their 11 HP, also not looking good. Only 1 copy of Gwen. Has the Karma 2, but really not much else to celebrate on his board compared to the other board, the Dooney board for the other Swark player. So it's looking kind of doomed for AlQadsiah. I think they know it. I think they're going to have some big plays. And this is not the play you want. GP walking up to Gwen, who does not have the Zanyas on her right now, does not have really any survivability. And look who's next. GP walks back, but the mech is now onto Karma. Karma has the Zanyas. Can Karma deal enough damage?
Okay.
Can the Yasuo clean up is the question. He does have healing, but no. Flouders does stay alive. The Karma manages to burst down everything.
All right, I'm here for it. Flouders, holding on The Zonya's definitely coming in absolutely clutch there. I was certainly getting flashbacks to when we saw that before, just have the Gangplank walk up, delete your backline, and that's all she wrote very, very quickly. But Flyders holds on. Bintum now down to 8 HP on a 4-round loss streak. If he goes out, he opens many more doors, but the blowout potential against AlQadsiah is still live. They could still have 3 players go out in the bottom 4 and end things early.
Bintum, we mentioned it, trying to play or force to play around this duelist reroll or duelist vertical after hitting the Viego for free off of the pocket recombobulator. Tried his best to tax the rest of the lobby. Is it going to be strong enough? He's facing SCSC, who has removed items off of the Mundo onto the Vive for now. So I believe this is obviously opening up some life vest to save Bintum for at least one more fight.
All Flyders will get taken down. And I think you're right, with the team assist here, it seems like Bintum will be able to hold on for that little bit longer and keep himself out of trouble. So, if memory serves, with Flyders down, with Bintum staying up, that's going to be bottom 2 for AlQadsiah. I'm still not confident the blowout isn't going to happen.
AlQadsiah on elimination station in this game 2. If they lose, they're out of EWC 2025, and 2 of their players are out in the bottom 2 positions, which means Rebanav and Espat are forced to finish first and second to force a game 3, which is a tall order considering these players are both playing 1-cost reroll lines. Kill reroll for Rebanav and the crew for Espat. We just saw the crew win the last game. It has a higher cap, so does kill on level 9. Can they make this comps work? Can they skill them enough?
And it does seem like a lot of the units that we're looking for have already been interdicted by the other side of the field. It must not be feeling too attached to their key right now, because of course, AlQadsiah lose this game, they lose the series, they're out of the competition. Their hopes and dreams will be crushed along with their key. And for T1, I mean, again, as we said it before, I think it's worth reiterating. This has been a real palate cleanser for them to come back in and show exactly what they are made of.
And T1 identifies that these players are fighting for their lives. They're trying to push really all the pressure onto them now, going level 9, finding the last 2 cap. We're going to see a first test here for Rebanav's Kale and for Bintum as well, who is close to elimination up against Crazy Moving. So this fight does not really matter as much. It's really only about where Espat and Rebanav finish. If either of them gets taxed for HP here, if either of them goes down, either in first or second, that could be it. GP going into the crew units now. Espat does win a very important fight. And more importantly, both Rebanav and Espat have to preserve HP because they could face each other. If one of these 2 players is on 1 life before kind of that top 2, top 3 scenario plays out, no matter how strong they can get, that's it.
And looking across the rest of the field, we can see T1 with the 3 remaining members. They've all got around the same HP or better than anything that we've got coming in from the AlQadsiah side of things. So it's going to be a very narrow line to go. Again, as I said, first and second are all that will suffice. At least with the balls we've got here, it seems possible, just not likely.
The scariest thing is Crazy Moving's board. I have to see how much that Gwen is going to carry with Fishbones. If she can just insta-delete backlines after her second cast, I think that might be it. So we'll have to see how that plays out. We're seeing the Gwen here up against SCSC will be a good indication of just how strong this Gwen is, how much damage she's dealing, and we're seeing the board pretty much disappear. The Gnar is down, the Jhin is down, the Mundo surviving, but he can't win fights by himself. SCSC also going down. Do Rebanav and Espat win this round as well? Are they facing each other? They're not. And the Rebanav is winning, so it's all going as planned, as needed for AlQadsiah right now.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's another way around, isn't it? For Rebanav can potentially go through and start eliminating players.
Kasante is the game plan for the Pandora's Bench. Maybe it's the way that Rebanav tries to win the game off of a 3-star forecast. Are there going to be denies from T1?
So yeah, so we've got SCSC and Dunizuni both pretty low on HP. We're going into stage 6 as well, so again, Rebanav seems to be the one who's going through and operating as the hitman to try and take out the individual members. We still got Crazy moving at 46 HP though. That might be a step too far.
We're seeing all the forecasts being rolled here. Any extra copies of Kasante would be huge. Potentially Rebanav wants to roll deep here because he has a chance to just get as many Kasantes out of the pool as possible. He has now an Akali 2 rolling on the Pandora's Bench, so that could just insta-win in the game almost if he finds one more copy of Kasante.
Now, Dunizuni has put in a shift. Again, we're talking about the sort of the paired players in the lobby, vastly outstripping what Volta was able to contribute in terms of overall power. But even the Gangplank 3 down to a single life will sell the board. We saw this yesterday, the strategic choice to bring yourself out of play.
Gunizuni knows he has a weaker matchup into these two players. He knows that out of everyone still left alive for T1, he has the lesser chance of making sure that they do not allow Rebenav and Espat to go 1 and 2. And so he sells his entire board to, one, make the game end quicker, have less time for Rebenav to hit the Cassante 3, and also to not deal damage to his teammates. Espat here, facing Rebenav, this is the fight we were talking about, a 1-unit win, so this is the best possible scenario they could have expected. Espat should still be at 2 lives on 18 HP in stage 6.
Oh boys, the question really is Rebenav up against Crazy Moving. They're both on the win streaks, but as you said, strategically, Dunizuni's shrinking the matchup pool. We have, of course, had Twisted Fate ticking for a while to push this board's power a little bit further.
The Braum is online as well. We have to look at Rebenav's board, have to see how close he is to the Cassante. It's the big question as well. I think Rebenav could be primed for a first place, and Espat maybe for a second, but Crazy Moving, this Gwen is just too scary.
We'll see. Certainly, I mean, it certainly seems like on paper, SC should be going down here. As I mentioned, the Kale is at her final form. She, of course, has got the AoE, which will cut through a lot of the board. I mean, certainly, we can see the Mundo can soak a lot of damage, but the second the Luchador kicks in, he's dropping some of his tanking duties. That means the secondary tank is down already off the Vi. We've got the scaling power of the Kale kicking in, and this will cut through the board, but Espat has been eliminated. Top 2 is no longer possible, so T1 will win the matchup and move forward in the competition.
He must have faced Crazy Moving, and his Gwen must have moved in a very crazy way to deal 18 HP worth of unit damage in stage 6. That is a lot of units left alive. I have to imagine it was Gwen just almost insta-killing the entirety of his backline, and Malphite left alive, not able to win anything.
We're just looking at the faces of AlQadsiah. It can happen just as suddenly as that. You can just see it starting to sink in. The journey is over. Of course, the T1, they're just so glad to be back on form and back up at the top. But our very first elimination of the entire tournament, our first crushing of a key will be coming in. And I mean, at least we got a hell of a final game for AlQadsiah to show exactly what they were capable of.
And it's tragic. I think the game plans were good. I think Espat did a great job of playing into the crew. I think Rebenav identified, hey, Kill's much stronger in this encounter. He tried to play it yesterday, I believe. It didn't work out. He went 8th. And then in this game now, he really found a lot of success with his kill comp. But the Fishbones from Portable Forge on 4-2 just completely threw a wrench in everyone's game plan, and Crazy Moving really did elevate himself to become that win condition player for T1.
Gosh, it's such a heartbreaker having the having the cameras there to be able to see the players just rolling on the last bit. For Rebenav, of course, as Crazy Moving actually moves in, they won't even, for AlQadsiah, they're not even going to get the satisfaction of being able to come first in the final game, because it seems like the Gwen is just too strong.
And Heartbreaker Volta, a player who I think has been in so many high-pressure situations. I think he'll come back from this, of course, but to be the leader on your team in terms of experience, to be the leader on your team in terms of just how much is expected from you as a player, and to not really show up in the way that was expected in a game like this, going 8th in the end. Maybe just the spots that he was given was the spot of having to sacrifice himself and his skill to play more for rerolls, and he just never seemed to have that luck that characterizes him, that wasn't able to hit the GP3 in any of his games, really, which has really been unfortunate in a meta like this one.
All right, last shot coming in. Rebenav will just about survive to take the hit another time, but I mean, it was the grand experiment for Volta, the most extreme version of this idea of could one great player, an absolutely incredible player, be the makings of a team. And of course, we didn't get to see, we didn't get to experience for ourselves necessarily, what Volta was inputting in terms of verbally to the teammates and exactly what he's contributing. You'd have to imagine it must have been immense, the amount, to be able to direct the team and organize, make sure everyone's doing what they need to do, and also pivot when incredible opportunities present themselves like they did for Crazy in this game.
And I think Rebenav, Espat, and Flouders have also really proven their ability as great players of TFT across the last few qualifiers. Looking at when they eliminated also 100T, for example, in the LCQ, they've had some big upsets. They were unlucky, I think, across many games and many situations with Gold Destiny, for example, across these matchups. But in the end, T1 wins the series in a dominating fashion. Bintum had his star moment. Really, every player on the team had their star moments in these 2 games. And this team is once again looking a little bit more similar to what we saw last year. A dominant T1 team that finished in the top 2 spots.
Just absolutely astonishing stuff. I mean, you can see from T1 just the relief painted on every single one of their faces. All right, we'll take a few more moments just to celebrate. Of course, we'll be heading to stage in just a moment to celebrate this first survival of the day. Of course, across the entirety of today, we will be seeing Mouse versus Falcon, the Flash Wars versus Fnatic and Rock versus Team Liquid. We will see 4 teams leaving the competition by the time this day is done.
And biggest surprises potentially from this series, the continuation of the crew is a very, very strong reroll as well. So a lot of meta adaptations we've seen across this first series that T1 was able to win. And I think we'll see more surprises